Hello, Year 3. We're coming towards the end of our World War II topic, and today we're going to discuss the end of the war and VE Day. But before we do that, I've written 5 questions on the board, and I'd like to see if you could answer any of those 5 questions. It's always good to have a recap of some of the things that we have covered during the topic. So these 5 questions say, when did World War II begin? Describe an Anderson shelter. How did people know that enemy planes were approaching? Where did people hide from the bombs? And how were children kept safe? So can you answer any of those 5 questions? I'm just going to pause it and add the answers. If you can pause the video, you can see if you can answer any of those questions of things we have covered so far. Welcome back, Year 3. I'm sure you thought of lots of these answers. I'll just run through the answers on the board. When did World War II begin? Well, Britain declared war on the 3rd of September 1939. If you just remembered 1939, that's brilliant. Describe an Anderson shelter. An Anderson shelter was a metal shelter that was half buried in your garden, built of corrugated iron. How did people know that enemy planes were approaching? They would hear the air raid siren. Where did people hide from the bombs? They would hide from the bombs in their shelters, whether that is a Morrison shelter inside, an Anderson shelter outside, or even the underground in London. How were children kept safe? Children were kept safe by being evacuated to the countryside through evacuation. So today we're going to talk about the end of the war and VE Day, which stands for Victory in Europe Day. You may have even had a VE Day party recently, as it was VE Day in May, and it was celebrated by lots of people having parties in their streets. So you may have seen people or had a similar party yourselves in your street with the people that you live near. There are actually 3 different sheets today. They just have a little bit more information on each one. You only have to read one of the sheets and complete one set of questions. You haven't got to do every single sheet and every single question. They are very similar, just with some slight differences. So you can choose which sheet you would like to complete. They just have more questions depending on which sheet you choose to complete. I am going to read the sheet for you because it just may help some people to be able to answer some of the questions about VE Day. I've just printed the first set of questions and the first 3 sheets. There are more, but you only have to read and complete one set of questions. VE Day. What is VE Day? VE Day stands for Victory in Europe Day and is celebrated on the 8th of May. Although it was not the end of the Second World War, it was the end of the fighting in Europe. Very important to remember. How did it happen? In April 1945, Hitler died. This meant that the Germans had to surrender their part in World War II to the Allies. The German president of the Third Reich, Grand Admiral Donitz, gave orders that General Jodl should go to the American Army headquarters in France. Here, Jodl surrendered to the Western and Russian officers and agreed to all their demands. The announcement. The British people began celebrating as soon as they heard the news. Bell ringers in churches around the country were ready to ring out the good news when official notice was given. The British Prime Minister Winston Churchill made the following announcement at 1940 on the 7th of May, so 7:40. In accordance with arrangements between 3 great powers, tomorrow, Tuesday, will be treated as Victory in Europe Day and will be regarded as a holiday. The effects of war. In Britain, during the war in Europe, 500,000 homes were destroyed, thousands of ordinary people were killed, and millions of lives had been torn apart. The 3 great powers were the British Empire, the Soviet Union, which you may now know as Russia, and the USA, America. Bring on the celebrations. People began decorating the streets with banners, bunting and ribbons. They had street parties, neighbours shared food and listened to the radio and news programmes. King George VI and the Queen appeared 8 times on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, and their 2 daughters, Princess Margaret and Princess Elizabeth, who is now Her Majesty the Queen, walked in the huge crowds in London. Churchill told the crowds, "This is your victory." The end of the VE Day. Buckingham Palace was lit up in floodlights for the first time in 6 years since the war began, and 2 searchlights formed a V, the sign of victory, above St Paul's Cathedral in London. All the lights were turned off again the next day. A special celebration. To celebrate 75 years since the original VE Day, the May Day bank holiday has been moved for the second time in history. Although it is usually on a Monday this year, the May bank holiday will be on a Friday to coincide with the anniversary of VE Day. And that's the day you may have had the parties in your street or near you. Buglers have been invited to play the last post from their homes at 2:55 p.m. This will be followed by a nation's toast to the heroes of World War II at 3 p.m. Here, people at home can raise a drink of their choice and say the following: "To those who gave so much, we thank you." The thought is that as a nation, the UK will toast their remembrance together. And it also gives a little bit of information about what a bugler is. Someone that plays the bugle, a horn-like instrument used by soldiers to send signals and orders. So that's the information on the sheet. There are also the answers on the back sheet as well. Please do try to answer the questions by finding the answers in the text. You can also highlight the answers in the text in different colours without having to look at the answers on the sheet. You can always check your answers at the end by looking at the answers on the sheet, but do try to complete the task without looking at the answers straight away. If you complete all of those questions, you can also write how you would have celebrated the end of the war. What would you have done to celebrate the end of the war? Would you have had a party or baked lots of cakes or decorated your house? What would you have done to celebrate the end of the war? Thank you for watching Year 3.